analogy, when you set up a fire, you can't just pile all the logs closely together. You need some space in between them for that oxygen, that breathing room to get in.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dr. Danisha Keating Show. Super excited to be here with you guys. I have my new friend Daniela here. We're going to be talking about self-care and burnout. One of the things to know with this particular podcast, what we're doing is we are coming to the kitchen table to talk as friends. So the rules that we have is that we cannot yell, scream, or talk over the other person. We are going to ask questions to understand, and we're going to bring you in as the fly on the wall to listen to how we would navigate something like this. Daniela, you are going to be talking about setting ourselves up for success and preventing burnout.
Yeah.
That happened. It's fine. We're going to move on from it. That's how you go viral, right?
Yeah.
But I think this is one of those topics that I have seen with preventing burnout. I think I've seen a lot of people kind of just not know what it is. And they don't think that it's something that can be prevented. I think we have just accepted burnout as a part of life. So Can you walk us through what you mean? And just let's dig in. What is burnout to you? Why is it a big deal? How do we prevent it? And let's just dig in.
Yeah, I think unfortunately in our culture, we've normalized feeling burnt out, feeling exhausted, feeling stressed, and just feeling like we have no control over our life, and it just being a mess. And we almost celebrate it sometimes with the way we realize it. And I think because some of the ways to prevent as well as undo, I've come back from my own burnout, so it is totally possible.
Right.
I think it can sound almost so simple, and it's
almost too simple.
Yeah. Yeah. And to be able to really take the actionable steps on a consistent basis, and we'll talk into when we get into more detail about, these micro moments that I'm going to talk about, but building these micro moments into your day is how we can kind of prevent and come back from burnout. But in general, to talk about burnout, I think I love using analogies. You'll find that about me. There's this analogy that I heard where, we all have stress. Stress is a normal part of life, and it's not about eliminating the stress in your life. But if you imagine stress like a bonfire, okay, so you're putting more logs on, you're putting more things on your plate, and that fire is just blazing. It is huge, it's hot, it's orange, all that kind of stuff. Burnout is when you've taken it too far, that after where you can't add another log because it's not gonna have any fire. There's no spark left. You might try fanning the flames and get a little warm ember here and there, but it is totally like that gray dust burnt out. It is beyond the point of having any energy, having any motivation, having the ability to do the things you need to do. And again, we kind of try and power through. We think we're going to get back to that blazing bonfire of just dealing with our stress and managing all the things on our plate. But it takes sometimes taking a step back, slowing down, giving some space in order to keep adding more things. Because like I said, sometimes that's just how life is. You do have things you need to do. But when you're intentionally prioritizing the right things in the right way and setting up space, again, that fire analogy, when you set up a fire, you can't just pile all the logs closely together. You need some space in between them for that oxygen, that breathing room to get in to keep your fire going. And so burnout is recognizing some of the things we're maybe doing to self-sabotage that. So we're looking at our mindset is that one big piece. We're looking at our time planning, how we're prioritizing and spacing things. And then self-care throughout our entire day. And when I talk about self-care, I know it can get a bad rap and seen as like a luxury, a nice to have, like a spa day or massage. And those are great, but they're not sustainable on a regular basis. That's like eating on Sunday and thinking you're not going to be starving on Tuesday. You need daily practical self-care throughout every single day. So that's it.
So we got to backtrack here. So I was like taking notes because I was like, you said something like some keywords that I was like, oh, we got to talk about this. So one of the things that when it comes to burnout, you said that it is not something that we just end up in. Like it is something that is gradual when we keep putting things on the fire. So I really do like that you said like, hey, like I went to the doctor and the doctor's like, you're clearly burned out. Like you need to not stress. And I was like, okay, funny. Because I have to go to work. Like I just can't just not work. I can't just not do what I need to do to get that food on the table. So telling me to reduce the stressors, I'm like, I can't just not have my job. But what you said was, which is what is key to understanding how to not make it worse, is to evaluate what you're putting on the fire. So walk me through that. Like how would you do that? And then how can like walk me through that if I wanted to start doing that? Because that's a different conversation that a lot of people are not talking about.
Yeah, because like I said, we all have things we need to do. Definitely.
Right.
uh, and sometimes we jump straight to, let's talk about time. Let's look at our, but actually I like to start with the mindset part of it first, because
Mm.
when we think differently, we feel differently. When we feel
Yeah,
differently, we
true.
think differently. And if we
True.
don't change that thought process behind, you're going to go through the motions. You might take some things off your plate. You might do some self care, but in your head, you're still running through all the things you have to do, or you're going to feel guilty for taking some time off, or you're going to have all these negative thoughts in your head like, oh, people are judging me. People are assuming
Right.
X, Y, and Z. So we
Right.
need to look at our mindset. What's the quality of the thoughts we're coming in with? What are some of those limiting beliefs? What are some of those maybe expectations or
Mm-hmm.
guilt, things that cause us guilt, and break some of that down?
Mm.
Sometimes we are so much kinder to everybody else than we are ourselves. And so
Yeah.
to be able to take those statements and reframe them as if we were talking to a friend, and kind of look
Mm.
at something we learned from our family growing up, whatever, and how can we reframe that mindset into a way that's going to serve us better going forward, so that now we can look at our schedule. I use actually the Eisenhower matrix to help people prioritize. It's such a great tool if you haven't seen it yet, and really
No.
look at
Yeah.
what's important. And it breaks it into these four quadrants: what's important and urgent, what's important and not urgent, what's urgent and not important, and what's completely unimportant and not urgent. Because I think anything we put on our to-do list, we
Mm.
automatically think it's important and urgent. And once everything's important and urgent, nothing is.
Yeah.
And recognize, everything carries a different weight. Some things are important but not urgent, so we can schedule those out so they're not all expected to be done maybe in the same day, same week, same month. Maybe
Right.
things are urgent but not important in the fact that we don't have to be the one to do it. And so many times,
Mm.
especially as women, we take on that burden of thinking we need to be superwoman and do it all and be it all. And I've been there myself. And that's can really trip you up, in recognizing you can delegate. You can
Yeah.
share responsibilities with people. You can outsource. I talked to this one woman once, and she was like, outsourcing her laundry was like the best thing she did for her mental
Yeah.
state of mind. There's
Right.
different ways to outsource food, carpooling, all sorts of things. And so looking, what don't you need to be the person to do, but just making sure it gets done. And then where are we losing hours of our life? Social media
Yeah.
can be one,
Yeah.
all those kind of things. And once we start scaling our time and our duties and our responsibilities and tasks in these different areas, it gives us some ease then to create a day that has some ease and breathing room to it. Because
Mm-hmm.
I love those buffer zones in between activities, because when people talk about work-life balance, they don't always love the word balance, because they're like, well, you can't have everything equal. That's just not possible. And I totally agree. When I use the word balance, I think of your ability to adapt, pivot, have resilience, and then balance.
Mm.
And those buffer zones between activities allows, number one, in case life happens, you've got some space so that you can adapt, you can pivot, you can,
Right.
you
Right.
spilled your coffee on the way out the door, you can quickly change because you're not running behind. You can also then have that free time to fit in those micro moments of self-care throughout your day in a way
Mm.
that's going to help you stay recharged throughout our day. We plug in our phone so many times a day. We always know where our charger is, but do we know where our personal charger is? Because
Mm.
self-care isn't just about that feeling of calm and zen and that kind of thing. It's your energy,
Right.
it's your confidence, it's how you show
Yeah.
up, and it's
Yeah.
what you bring to any conversation, relationship, job, anything that you're showing up.
Mm-hmm. There's so much there. And I'm like, oh my gosh, okay. So I remember having a conversation with someone who had been talking about burnout, and she said something that when it came to like, someone had once told her, you can't You can't do it all. And you need to learn how to delegate. And she said the best thing, because I was just like right there with you. She's like, now, friends, if you want to delegate, you actually have to delegate. Like, you can't sit here and say, I'm going to delegate to you and then say you didn't do it the way that I wanted to. Like, you have to also accept that they might do it differently than you. Yeah. And if you can't accept that, you're never going to get the help that you need. And I was like, wait a minute. Like, because most of the time we'll say like, then just don't delegate it again and then take it back. And she's like, no, you have to recognize the person you're delegating it to is going to delegate. They're going to do it differently. And you need to accept that. So it was just kind of funny when you said that, because I'm thinking of so many conversations I've recently had with people about like delegation. It's like, well, they won't do it the way that I want it to be done. But then I think we can come back to that hierarchy of like, is it important that this thing gets done the way that you want to the T? Like the laundry isn't folded from left to right the way you want it to. Is that really a crisis? No, but is that where we're seeking control? And I'm just like, okay, I'm tracking, I'm following, I'm getting this. So then the other part you talked about, you said self-care, which is one of those words that people are like you said, I can't go to the spa. And some of us look at a shower as self-care, and not like an extra shower or a bath, like a shower first time in the week. So when you say self-care, can you walk me a little bit more through what that looks like when you don't have the money to go to massages? Like you said, it's not sustainable. What are some more sustainable self-care things that we can do?
Yeah. And actually too, just to even comment back on what you were saying, when it comes to that delegating, that's where, again, that mindset piece comes in. You know, why does it have to be done this way? What about your control? Again, you know, where's that coming from? So they definitely all tie together. But like I said, that self-care, it's not a nice to have, it's a daily necessity, just like brushing your teeth, eating, sleeping. And so when I talk about self-care, there's these 8 pillars that I cover. And it's how you eat, how you sleep, how you move, how you dress, how you decorate and organize your home, how you connect with others, how you think about money, as well as just the traditional personal development of meditation, mindfulness, gratitude, journaling, those types of things. And they all work together to help you kind of roll through your day. I use a wheel analogy, and we kind of have this exercise where we go through to kind of see, how are you rolling through your day? Where are you getting caught up? Because there's areas that might not initially seem like self-care, but if they're not working right, if something's wrong in that area, you're going to snap. Maybe you're going to be irritable. You're not going to be yourself. And again, this self-care isn't always about creating that massive calm zen, but helping you be in a state that you can respond rather than react when life happens. You have that, again, that ease, that space, that kind of place where you're not constantly on edge and stressed out. You know, organization, how you decorate and organize your home, just knowing where your car keys are in the morning, having your
that's
stuff
a huge thing
the night before. How you dress, you show up differently when you're wearing something that you feel like you look great in. You're going to be more confident. You're not going to be as self-conscious. Again, those micro moments, even the shower, it might sound like, it's just something you got to do each day, but to take 1 or 2 minutes of intention during that time. Self-care can be done in as little as a minute. And I always start people sometimes with just a 1-minute practice where you're not doing anything else. You're not running through your to-do list. You're not scrolling on social media. You're not, throwing a load of laundry in. You're just sitting for 1 minute, focusing maybe on breathing, doing some shoulder shrugs, taking a sip of water, looking outside if you're not in the shower. But you know what I mean? And just for that 1 minute, studies have shown, you're lowering your cortisol levels, your heart rate slowing down, you're slowing down those stress processes, as well as you're getting a dopamine hit of setting a goal and achieving it. So imagine having a reminder go off on your phone 5 times a day, and you do that for 1 minute 5 times a day. You now have a 5-minute self-care practice every single day. You might notice, hey, I have 2 minutes right now, and you slowly start to build these micro moments in, and that's where you really start to then build that resilience, build that reservoir to be able to pull from when you have those more stressful times.
That makes sense. So it's definitely one of those things that I think, in my head, I'm going to say what I think people are thinking is, in the moment of that burnout, you're like, well, I don't have the time for that. And what you said was so key, is it's your mindset that needs to shift.
Mm-hmm.
We have to stop telling ourselves we don't have the time, and it's I need to make time,
Oh yeah, we
because
make
that
the
is
time for the things we
something.
want.
Say that again.
They said we always make the time for the things we want.
Yeah, that's I saw this reel that this lady had posted, and she said the same thing. She was saying, telling herself like, "Oh, I can't," and she goes, "It's because I didn't want to." That was
Mm-hmm.
what it was. And we need to be honest with ourselves in that, is it that I really can't? Because if it was something I wanted, I would make it happen. But I didn't want it that much. As much as I said that I did, I had believed I didn't want it as much as I had said that I can't. And that is such a shift of when, there are going to be moments when you wake up in your burnout where you're just like, I don't have the energy to do it. And this is the determination piece, is like, I don't want to be here in 3 weeks of feeling the same feeling. So I need to get up, brush my hair. I need to change. I need to take a shower or put my makeup on, even when I don't want to do it, and
Mm-hmm.
just do it, because then you can get into a rhythm and a routine. Now, can we talk through what is the difference between like a burnout moment and chronic, like just done being like, I feel like it's like maybe like more of depression. I think people conflate depression and burnout a little bit. Can you talk to me about what you see those two as?
Yeah, and definitely there's a line, where you can go from just managing stress, feeling overwhelmed and burnt out, to possibly more of a clinical depression, where you need to be then working with a therapist, working with a counselor, because physiologically you've now put your body in a position where you're off balance, from a
Mm,
bigger level than just the to-do list, than just the things on your plate. And so having some strategies, working with a counselor, is definitely a different process than working as a coach, as a
yeah.
social worker and a coach. I see both sides, and there's
Mm,
a line between the two as far as what I'm doing in each role. And so definitely to not confuse, when something's more clinical, when you're there in that state for like at least 2 weeks without any relief, versus
mm,
you're kind of in and out. That's where you're more focusing on some burnout type of stuff. Maybe it's a lack of boundaries, and you can tell when your energy is getting depleted, not recognizing what you need to recharge.
right. Yeah.
Whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, people get confused and think, well, if I'm an introvert, I'm shy, I'm quiet, I don't like to socialize, I don't
Right.
like people. And that's not the case. You can be what's called a non-introvert, which is, or I like to say it's a social introvert, where you like being around people, but it drains you. And so you need
Mm-hmm.
to be able to do things to recharge based on who
Yeah.
you are. And finding those options can be hard, again, because, like you said, we get in different habits, different routines, and being able to
Mm-hmm.
automate the right things takes some time and practice.
Right.
Allow yourself just the grace to fumble through it, because it's not going to be perfect right away. And that's the other
Yeah.
part. I think we try something once. Oh, I tried using a planner. I tried time management. I tried self care.
Right. Right.
It didn't work. It's not
Yeah.
that easy.
And the thing that I've personally done wrong is I've tried to do all of it at once. Like, I'm like,
Yes.
well, I'm burned out, so I need to work out, I need to eat healthy, I need to do this, I need to do. And it's like, what I have found to actually work to get me out of that burnout is, like you said, the one thing. Okay, what is the biggest stressor right now is that I have no time to do anything. Okay, let me reevaluate what's on my plate right now. What do I need to say no to? What can I just push off for a couple of weeks or months at this moment that's not that urgent like I feel like it is? then then just try to get up and start my day like that's a little bit different when you're in that extreme burnout. And I entered into a season of the last couple of years where it was that clinical depression, but it was being fueled by just
Yeah.
saying yes to everything. And so it was like, sitting with a therapist and her being like, hey girl, you gotta say no. I'm sitting with my husband and him being like, have you considered no? And what it was rooted in, what I uncovered was I felt like by saying no, I was going to miss another opportunity. But what I was doing by saying yes to everything was I was missing out on the one opportunity I wanted to actually do.
Yeah.
So I over said yes. And I ended up, that was for years. And I ended up in a massive chronic burnout stage that was with panic and anxiety and burnout and just a
Mhm.
lot of depression. which is hard when you're sitting in it and you're just like, I don't even know where to start. And I loved that both my husband and my therapist were like, girl, you can't start with everything. Start with one thing. Like, what is the big thing right now? Okay,
Yeah.
let's walk through that together. And one of the biggest things too was what I was fueling into my body with social media, music, TV, and food. So being able to start small, I didn't just like, okay, turn all music off, turn all TV off, turn social media off, don't eat anything. I started little by little, where it was like, okay, I'm going to silence my phone. And that felt really weird. I put it on do not disturb. That felt so weird. So, but I did that every day. And then I started to get used to it. And so then when I started to feel that like panic in me when I had a busier day, I would immediately like, oh, time to put the phone off. Like, that's what's causing this panic in me right now, is that I'm feeling I need to be in 100 different places versus present where I'm at. So with when we're thinking through this particular situation of burnout and working with that burnout, what would be something that someone say that maybe they're feeling burned out from being, maybe they're a single parent, or there really isn't anyone else they can tap into, and they don't have the financial means to like give someone their laundry. What are some small steps that they can take to help reduce burnout? Because maybe they were like, okay, I've sat and I've done the meditation thing. I really like the setting of the alarms and being like, okay, time to go on a 2-minute walk, time to go outside, time to breathe for a second. What would be some other things that are practical that we can do for that, for those kind of things?
Yeah. And I love, you were just talking about one of my favorite things you could do, which is boundaries. Sometimes
Yes.
boundaries gets a bad rap as just saying no, as a negative, as a wall. But
Right.
boundaries are so freeing. They are a blessing. They are a gift you give to yourself and everyone else
Mm-hmm.
around you, because not only are you taking care of yourself, but you're showing everyone else around you how to treat you, what you need.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
especially if you're, with kids, I was a single mom with 2 little kids, and they were with me on this journey, and it
Mm-hmm.
taught them what they needed to do to take care of themselves. The
Yes.
people around you sometimes are, I found, as I was on my journey, people were looking for that validation and permission that it was okay to
Mm-hmm.
that space and do these things. And
Right.
really, I think whether you're listening to this podcast, you have a support group, you have one friend you can talk to be able to have that support and validate
Mm-hmm.
it, because it sounds like you were getting that validation, can
Yeah.
definitely help, with, like you said, the simplest of boundary of putting your phone on do not disturb, you
Right.
know, that type of thing, putting it in another room. I actually have a free resource on my website, Reclaim Your Time in 10-minute blocks cheat sheet. It gives
Mm.
you ideas on how to find just 10 minutes here,
Mm-hmm.
what you can do, to create that space for yourself, and what to do with 10 minutes or less, because it is such, you know, there's so many different options, as well as self-care doesn't have to be done in isolation. And I think that's the other part I wanted to mention was,
That
a lot
part.
of times we think it needs to be alone, it needs to be quiet, it needs to be peaceful. Laughter is a great form of self-care. The energy you get
Mm.
from laughter,
Mm-hmm.
again, doing these things with your kids, with your family, going outside together, taking a walk,
Mm.
a bike ride, listening to something funny, having a dance party in the kitchen,
Mm-hmm.
prepping together. There's so many ways to incorporate the people around you into that self-care, so it doesn't have to feel like I've got to find this time just for myself.
Right. Right. Right.
Self-care doesn't mean alone care.
Yeah. It feels like it is,
Yeah.
but you also brought up the validation thing, where sometimes it's we're showing other people that like to be validated in their nose. But I think sometimes too, when we bring it to certain people, we're looking to be validated, like, hey, you can say no. And so that's where doing this in community with people, with the right people, they're gonna say like, hey, you're overextending yourself. And this is not to get offended on our side. Like, I remember someone was like, yeah, you're a workaholic. And I'm like, well, I'm not really a workaholic, but I could understand what they were seeing because of they didn't see all the other stuff that I was saying no to. I was
Mhm.
just saying yes to the things
Yeah.
that I wanted to say yes to. But I
Well, and
work hard. And it was kind of like that moment where I had a choice to get offended by that or not. But it was one of those things that I recognized, like, oh, what I can do in a 2 hour span is what some people do in an 8 hour span. And there are so many things that I think we assume about other people is that they're saying yes to all of it. They have it all together. And I'm the only one struggling. So when we go into community and we start being real, people are like, oh no, yeah, like I have a house cleaner. I think that was the most shocking thing to me, is that there was someone that I assumed did not have a house cleaner, and I'm like, their house is always clean, they always look so good, like they're always presenting themselves well, and they happen to be struggling emotionally with some stuff. And she's like, yeah, like 6 months ago I started having someone clean my house, and I had been comparing myself to like, well, why am I not doing like so and so? Why do I not have dinner on the table at this time? Why am I not cooking homemade bread? Why am I not having my house clean? And she has more kids than I do. And she was just like, oh girl, no, I've been using a house cleaner. And I was like, wow. And she goes, oh, and that baked bread, my friend brought it over. And I was like, cool. So the last 6 months, I have been definitely like struggling because of how on it you are. And I felt like you were doing all these great things. And I'm like, you are doing all these great things. But she goes, no, 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 I know how to delegate. And I was just like, dang. So I then hired a house cleaner, and I was like, oh, this is really nice. And it, like, you know, that season's come and gone where it's like sometimes we have someone, sometimes we don't. But when I start to feel like, okay, I really need the house to be like, I just want a deep clean, I don't have the time to do it. But you know what? Someone else does, and they want to make some money. So I'm going to ask them to come over. And that has been so helpful. But it was so weird to delegate at first. But I recognized that when I was isolated, like you said, I just didn't realize how many other people were going through it too. And that really helped to understand that, like, I'm not failing. I'm just struggling like everybody else is.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing you just talked about too, you know, you were saying yes to a lot of things you wanted to say yes to. And people don't always realize too, boundaries can come from the things we're passionate about. People always
Yes.
assume it's from the things we don't like to do, but
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
we're passionate about is where we throw our
Mm-hmm.
boundaries out the window. So whether it's a job, a business, your kids, a
Yes.
relationship, if you go all in, it's going to feel more isolating because you're going to ride those
Mm-hmm.
highs and lows more intensely. I can remember a new mom friend telling me, you know, like I was her first adult conversation in like 2 days because she had just been so all in
Mm-hmm.
on her kids, you know? And
Yeah.
so to think of where are you not holding your boundaries? Where are you spending
Yes.
too much time? Because even those areas of self care, if you just work out 24/7, you know, if you're just meal prepping and eating 24/7, anything, you can have too much of a good thing. And so you need to have that
Right.
balance between.
Right. And I think that's such a great point, is that that balance is super important. And when I think of balance, I think a lot, like you said, a lot of people think that it's equal. And I don't, that's not how I view balance. Balance is like sometimes this comes up more, this comes down, this
Mhm.
moves up, and then this moves, like we're balancing it
It's
versus,
working together.
yeah, and it works in tandem. Like it's not this thing where I sit back and I'm like, everything is full force 100% of the time. Like sometimes where my no's are coming in, there was a lot more no's than yeses going out because of that season. But then the next season, I'm saying yes to a lot of things. So it's like, it's just balancing. It's an ebbing and flowing. But I think especially with when we align ourselves, it's like, I actually recently just did this. I was giving, I had worked as a professor for 4 years, and it was like the ultimate goal that I always wanted. And I recognized like I get to do that in my own business. I get to teach, and I do all the things that I love to do anyway in my own business. But I was giving 15 to 20 hours in just like grades and emails and setting up classes and conversations. And then I didn't take into consideration the emotional energy that I was putting in addition to all of this stuff. So it was just kind of time to be like, okay, it's not that it's a bad thing. It's not that I'm not good at it. It's not that it's not that I can't, it's already in my schedule, but it is one of those things that it was just pulling me in a different direction. And I wasn't being able to say yes to other things because this was on my plate, but it was yes for things that would actually be what I wanted to do in my business. So I was
Mhm.
like, well, I'm doing what I love anyway. Why am I still saying yes to this? It's actually not feeding my energy. It's actually kind of one of those things I'm like, oh, I'm not really looking forward to grading and like all these emails, but I would do it. And when I sat back, I kept like, before I recognized, like, I was like, why am I so burned out with this particular thing? Like, why is this not feeding me anymore like it used to? One of the things that I recognize is that even though I was employed in one place where I was teaching, I was still giving myself to like 300-400 different people in a span of 8 to 16 weeks. So that's a lot of energy going out. And so I was like, I just don't have the capacity to take my business to the next level if I'm still serving in this area here. And I'd rather have that next level over here. So I'm going to go ahead and step away. And at first it felt very shameful because I'm just like, oh, I like failed. It's like, no, 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 like didn't fail. But it was that thing that it wasn't in line with where the direction I was going in anymore. And I recognized that mindset shift of just like, hey, you're giving yourself to 300 people. That's not one person. That's not one thing. You're not failing by saying, hey, this is not an alignment anymore. This is just not an alignment anymore. For now or for indefinite, like I don't know what that answer is, but for now it's just not, and it hasn't been for quite some time. So that's interesting that you're just like, hey, this is the balancing, the boundaries. This is looking at it and saying, hey, is this really in alignment to what I want to do? Because if I'm saying yes to over here, but it's not where I really want to be, like I'm not going to really find the contentment with it.
Yeah. And it's just proof that you're still growing. If anything, it's validating the
Right.
fact that you are continuing to grow into this next
Mm-hmm.
level person. And it's okay just because you had a goal and you met it doesn't mean that has to stay then your ultimate goal. You're now up level
Right.
to a different level of
So
goal
true.
based on what you
Mm-hmm.
achieved. Because you know, you probably might not have shot to that next level without hitting that milestone in between.
Exactly. And I think that that's a really good way to put it is like I can reevaluate those goals too because sometimes those goals are not the end goal. It's just the original goal that we thought of. We just didn't reevaluate it.
Right.
I love that. Is there anything else that you would like to add before we end? This was
Um,
such a good conversation.
like I
I love
said,
this.
just to give yourself grace on this journey. So many
That's
times,
yes.
especially as adults, we're not used to trying something and not having it work instantly right away. So just
That part.
please keep practicing, give yourself grace, and reach out if you have any questions.
I love that. You guys make sure you follow. I'm going to have all her information down below that you guys can follow with her. I think it's super important for us to take that self-care, take that information, sit with it and just look at one thing. First, I love how in the beginning Daniela said, sit down, prioritize what is really urgent, what needs to be done right now, what is not so urgent that can be done tomorrow, and what is not urgent that I keep putting to the forefront. Because I think that's really where the auditing comes in to help us grow. So you guys can follow along and ask her questions, put comments in the comment box, and make sure to like, subscribe, and follow. Have a wonderful day, you guys.